My name is Emily Carter. I am 30 years old. And for 18 months, I planned every detail of my wedding. I chose Murphy's Hall. I saved for my custom ivory gown. And I worked extra shifts just to make the day perfect. But when I carried the bridesmaid dresses into the rehearsal, I froze. My younger sister Vanessa was already standing at the center of the hall in my gown. Holding the arm of my fiancé Mark, my mother clapped. Guests raised their glasses. And Vanessa's voice rang out that they would marry tonight instead of tomorrow. In that moment, I realized the betrayal went deeper than I ever imagined. And if you think this was only about a stolen dress and a stolen groom, stay with me. Because what followed tore open secrets that shocked everyone in that hall and changed my family forever. And as the hall erupted in whispers, I gripped the doorway, my body heavy, with the weight of every eye turning toward me. I pressed my nails deeper into the wood, steadying myself as the room swayed. The air felt heavy, perfumed with roses from the floral centerpieces already arranged for tomorrow. I had pictured this moment so many times, walking into Murphy's Hall with joy, hearing congratulations, feeling proud that all my hard work had come together. Instead, my first step into the space was met with humiliation so sharp I could hardly breathe. Vanessa lifted the skirt slightly as she spun again, letting the fabric fan around her ankles. "Do you see how it moves?" She cooed to no one in particular, though her voice carried to every corner. "The lace overlay is exquisite." I had spent 3 separate appointments at the seamstress, perfecting that overlay, adjusting the length, the tiny details along the sleeves, making sure the fit was just right. And here she was, parading it like a costume she had borrowed for a party. I bent down to pick up the bridesmaid dresses that had fallen from my arms. My hands trembled so badly, I could hardly grip the plastic covers. Inside were the lavender gowns my friends had agreed to wear. Gowns they had been fitted for twice. Gowns I had stretched my paycheck to afford. I clutched them close to my chest, as though holding them might keep me from unraveling completely. Someone near the bar whispered loudly enough for me to hear, "She looks incredible. No wonder Mark chose her." Laughter followed, quick and sharp, and I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted iron. My breath caught as I looked again at Mark. His jaw was tight, his Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed. He still had not looked at me. Not even once. That avoidance hurt worse than Vanessa's smug smile. I wanted to scream his name. I wanted to demand an explanation. Instead, my voice came out weak, thin as paper. "What is this?" No one answered. Patricia, my mother, turned toward me finally, but not with the expression of comfort I longed for. She only shook her head like I was a nuisance. "Emily, do not spoil this moment. Vanessa shines tonight, and you should be happy for her." Happy. My heart clenched. It was my wedding that was supposed to shine, not some twisted show of betrayal. The chatter around me swelled. Aunt Linda hurried over with a tray of champagne flutes, her face glowing. "I cannot believe this," she gushed, pressing a glass into Vanessa's free hand. "What a love story." Vanessa accepted it gracefully, lifting the glass high while Mark kept his hand limp at his side. I tightened my grip on the bridesmaid dresses. Each bag seemed heavier now, dragging at my arms. I had carried them into the hall as a bride, to be. In the span of minutes, I felt stripped down to nothing, my identity collapsing like tissue paper. Memories of late nights organizing spreadsheets, of double shifts at the clerk's office to save extra money, of sketching out table layouts at my apartment dining table. All those sacrifices clung to me. I had built this day piece by piece, only to see it stolen without hesitation. I tried to inhale slowly, to calm the thundering in my chest. The chandeliers above shimmered, their light blinding, almost cruel. Vanessa leaned in closer to Mark, her curls brushing his shoulder. She has been practicing that move since childhood, I thought. That tilt of her head, that calculated sweetness that made people excuse anything she did. Teachers forgave her late homework. Dad overlooked her curfews. And now my mother applauded her for slipping into my gown and into my fiancé's arm. Do you really think you belong in that dress? I managed to whisper. My voice cracked. But Vanessa heard. Her smile never faltered as she turned toward me. Why not? She answered simply. Her tone sugary. Practiced. After all, it was just hanging there in your closet. Mark wanted to see me in white. Did you not? Darling. She squeezed his arm as if daring him to contradict her. He said nothing, eyes darting toward the floor again. The heat behind my eyes threatened to spill over, but I clenched my jaw. No tears. Not here. Not in front of them. I forced my shoulders back, though my legs shook. All around me, relatives leaned closer, their eyes hungry, waiting for drama. I could sense their pity, their judgment, their fascination. I knew exactly what they were thinking. Poor Emily, always the serious one, always overshadowed. And now even her groom prefers her sister. A sudden burst of camera flash blinded me. Patricia had pulled out her small silver digital camera, snapping photo after photo, praising Vanessa with every click. Mark. Hold her hand. This is history, she chirped. I flinched at the word. History. She was already rewriting my story, erasing me in real time. I wanted to step forward, to rip the dress from Vanessa's body, to shake Mark until he gave me the truth. But I stayed rooted to the spot. Clutching the bridesmaid dresses like a shield, the hall's hum grew louder, and my ears rang. My heart beat so fast I thought it might tear through my chest. And still my mother clapped, and still my sister smiled, and still my fiancé avoided my eyes. I pressed my back against the doorframe, drawing in one sharp breath after another. My nails dug deeper into the wood, grounding me in the chaos. The truth burned inside me, but I held it back. For now, all I could do was stand there and let the scene play out. The whispers, the laughter, the applause. Every sound pressed harder against me until it became unbearable. The hall tilted once more. I steadied myself and forced my chin up. If they wanted me broken, they would not have it. Not yet. Not here. Vanessa's voice cut through the buzz of the room, sweet and triumphant, as if this had all been rehearsed. We are getting married tonight. No need to wait until tomorrow. Her words rolled over the crowd like confetti tossed into the air. For a moment no one moved. Then gasps rose, followed by laughter and clinking glasses. A few of my cousins cheered as though they were at a football game. I could not stop staring at her. The gown hugged her perfectly, but it was never meant to be hers. I remembered the hours spent flipping through bridal magazines, the way my hands trembled, signing the check to the boutique, the way I stood alone in the dressing room, under harsh fluorescent lights, while a seamstress pinned the bodice tighter. I had worked through late nights at the clerk's office, filing records until my vision blurred, so I could make the monthly payments without overdrafting my account. I had pictured the exact moment I would walk down the aisle in that dress, believing that for once in my life I would be seen. That dream crumbled with every turn of Vanessa's smile. Mark stood beside her like a statue. His face was pale, his jaw tight. He had not spoken a single word. He let her hold his arm, let her take the spotlight, let her announce their betrayal as if he had no voice of his own. I tried to catch his eye, desperate for an explanation, but he looked anywhere else. The floor, the chandeliers, the champagne bubbling in Vanessa's glass. Anywhere but me. My mother's voice rang out next, calm and certain, the same tone she had used to scold me as a child. Emily, let it go. You are too practical to understand this kind of love. You will find someone more suitable. Someone at your level. She adjusted her camera strap and smiled warmly at Vanessa, her pride obvious. Not a glance of sympathy in my direction, not even a flicker of recognition that I was the daughter who had been planning this wedding for a year and a half. The heat rose in my chest, spreading through my arms until I shook. The humiliation was so sharp it felt physical, like being stripped bare in front of my entire family. The crowd responded just as she wanted. Aunt Linda raised her glass. Cousins followed, toasting the so-called happy couple. Words of congratulations bounced around the hall, each one heavier than the last. I could not hold it in any longer. My voice broke out louder than I expected. How long? The chatter cut off instantly. Glasses hovered mid-air. Forks clinked against plates. And the air shifted as every face turned toward me. I felt the weight of 100 eyes pressing down. Their curiosity mixing with discomfort. Vanessa's smile widened, unbothered by the silence. Does it matter? Emily. What matters is that Mark is finally with the right person. Her words dripped with sweetness. But the cruelty beneath was sharp enough to draw blood. She turned her head slightly, letting her curls fall against her shoulder, presenting herself as the dazzling bride everyone should admire. My throat tightened, but I stepped forward anyway. The bridesmaid dresses still clutched against my chest. The plastic bags rustled. Loud in the silence, I repeated the question. Slower this time. How long has this been happening? Mark shifted, his mouth opening as if he might speak. But no sound came. His Adam's apple bobbed, his hands tightening into fists at his sides. He looked trapped. A man cornered. Vanessa did not give him the chance, long enough for him to realize what he wanted, she said, her tone light, her eyes glittering with triumph. The room buzzed again, hushed voices filling the space. I caught fragments. I knew it. She always gets what she wants. Poor Emily. Some faces looked sympathetic, but more of them looked entertained. My humiliation was their evening's theater, and I was the unwilling star. I gripped the dresses harder, my knuckles white against the plastic. Images rushed through my mind. Too fast. Too sharp. The night Mark had proposed by the lake. The ring catching the moonlight. The countless evenings spent sketching out seating charts. The phone calls to caterers and florists, trying to stretch every dollar. The faith I had placed in him. Each memory now felt poisoned. My mother's voice cut in again, firmer, annoyed that I refused to step aside. Emily. Stop this nonsense. Do not embarrass yourself further. Vanessa and Mark are happy. That should be enough for you. Enough for me. The words nearly choked me. I was supposed to be married tomorrow. The vendors had been paid. The hall booked. The invitations sent. My name was on every contract. Yet, here stood my sister in my gown, my mother applauding her, my fiancé silent. Enough for me. The insult was unbearable. Aunt Linda tried to break the tension, lifting her glass again. To love finding a way, she said brightly. As if this was some fairy tale, the guests echoed, clinking glasses once more. Champagne fizid. Laughter rose again, as though my world had not just collapsed. I steadied my breath, forced myself not to tremble. My voice came out low but sharp. This is my wedding. This hall. These plans. This dress. Mine. The word echoed in the high ceilings, bouncing back at me. Fragile yet strong. Vanessa only tilted her head and sipped from her glass. Then she leaned into Mark, her eyes never leaving mine. Not anymore. The silence that followed felt heavy, suffocating. I could feel the sting of tears pressing behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. If they wanted me broken, they would not see it here. I turned my gaze on Mark one last time. His lips parted, but still he said nothing. His silence screamed louder than any confession. Around us, the crowd began to murmur again. Restless, curious, hungry for more. I stood straighter, gripping the dresses like armor, and swallowed the lump in my throat. The question had been asked, and though no clear answer had been given, everyone in that hall now knew the truth. Something had been happening long before tonight, and the betrayal was only just beginning to reveal itself. The weight of the silence pressed on me, and my eyes fell on Vanessa, glowing in the dress that was supposed to be mine. It was not just tonight that crushed me. It was every year leading up to this moment. Every reminder that in my mother's eyes, I had always been second best. I remembered being 10 years old, standing on the porch of our small house in Columbus, watching Vanessa climb into the camp bus. She was holding a brand new duffel bag with her initials embroidered on the side. While I held a bucket of soapy water to scrub the kitchen floor, Patricia waved proudly as the bus pulled away, bragging to neighbors about how Vanessa had such potential. No one asked why I stayed behind. No one cared that I wanted to go too. By high school, the gap widened. Vanessa was given money for cheerleading trips, for new clothes from the mall, for everything that kept her smiling and shining. I worked weekends at the library to afford secondhand jeans, slipping home after shifts with aching feet, while Patricia reminded me to be grateful I was so practical. When I mentioned applying to universities out of state, my mother's tone turned sharp. Too expensive, she said. Too impractical. Stay close. Stay useful. A month later, Vanessa received a check from her for tuition at a private college in Chicago, studying communications. The dream she had chosen overnight, standing in Murphy's Hall now. I could feel the weight of those years pressing down like bricks. Vanessa twirled in my gown as though it had always been meant for her, while my mother looked on with the same pride she had always reserved for her younger daughter. And me, clutching bridesmaid dresses like a maid. Not a bride. Not a daughter worthy of celebration. The murmurs around us blurred into the background. My eyes locked on Patricia, who was snapping another photo, her smile unbothered by the wreckage unraveling around her. Something inside me cracked. It was not just betrayal by my fiancé. It was decades of being invisible. I opened my mouth, but before I could speak, my father's voice broke through the noise. Robert Carter, quiet for most of his life, cleared his throat with a heaviness that drew attention. His face was drawn tight, his brows furrowed, and when he spoke, his words carried a weight I had never heard from him before. Pat, stop it. You are humiliating your daughter in front of everyone. The room froze. Patricia lowered the camera, blinking in surprise. She had never been challenged by him publicly. Not once in 30 years of marriage. Even Vanessa faltered, her smile dimming for the first time. The guests turned toward my father. Startled by the firmness in his tone, Patricia tried to brush it off, her voice brittle. Robert, this is not what it looks like. You know Vanessa was always more suited for these moments. She looks beautiful. And Emily? Well, Emily is strong. She can handle it. But my father did not waver. His jaw tightened. His hands clenched at his sides. This is not about who looks beautiful. This is about respect. Respect for your daughter who has worked for everything she has, who planned this wedding, who paid for this hall, and who is standing here being stripped of her dignity while you clap for the one taking it all away. The silence grew heavy again. But this time it carried a different edge. I felt my throat tighten, tears pricking behind my eyes. Not from pain, but from hearing someone finally stand for me. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably, her fingers loosening around Mark's arm. She tried to laugh it off, her voice light but shaky. Dad, you are overreacting. This is not humiliation. This is love. Mark and I belong together. And Emily will understand eventually. I stared at her. The girl who had been given everything, who still wanted more, who had stepped into my gown and called it destiny. My voice was low, but steady. No. Vanessa, this is not love. This is theft. A ripple ran through the crowd. Patricia's lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes darting between me and my father. I saw the discomfort building, the cracks in her mask of composure. For once, she could not explain it away. For once, the truth was louder than her dismissal. I drew in a deep breath and steadied myself, the bridesmaid dresses still heavy in my arms, my father's words echoing in my ears. Tonight was no longer just about Mark or Vanessa. It was about a lifetime of being treated as less, and the shift in the air told me the family saw it now too. And for the first time, I did not feel entirely alone. Mark shifted uneasily, his shoulders tight under the tailored suit he had bought for our engagement photos. His hand twitched at his side, brushing against the phone in his pocket. A faint buzzing carried across the quiet hall, sharp against the stillness. His phone lit up with a glow I knew too well. The numbers, 602, glaring like a warning sign. Phoenix. My stomach clenched. The room blurred for a moment, and my mind rushed back to every odd detail I had ignored. The trips that never made sense, the way he would toss out a quick excuse about business opportunities in Arizona. He never offered more than vague descriptions. A client needed him for a consultation. A conference came up suddenly. Each time I asked for details, he brushed me off with a smile, as though I were silly for asking. I had convinced myself that partners trusted each other, that digging too deeply was controlling. Tonight, with that phone buzzing again and again, I knew better. Months earlier, I had noticed discrepancies in our shared account. Withdrawals labeled as vendor deposits that did not match the contracts I held in a folder at home. When I pressed him about a payment marked for a florist, he waved it away, saying the shop used a different merchant code. I wanted to believe him. I wanted so badly to believe the man I had agreed to marry. I told myself planning a wedding was complicated, that little errors were natural. Still, something in his eyes that day unsettled me. He had looked past me as he spoke, his jaw stiff, as if rehearsing. And the phone calls. Nights when his phone lit up while we sat on the couch, he would step into the kitchen, lowering his voice, or slip outside, saying it was work. Once, when I glanced at the screen before he snatched it away, I caught the same Phoenix number. He said it was a client. He always said it was a client. Now, in the middle of Murphy's Hall, surrounded by my family and my sister in my dress, that same number burned against the glow of his phone. Mark's hand trembled as he pressed it deeper into his pocket, silencing the vibration, his eyes darting toward the exit like a cornered animal. My breath grew shallow, my pulse racing. I could feel the pieces of a puzzle clicking into place, forming a picture too dark to ignore. The weekend trips, the financial inconsistencies, the evasive glances. My instincts screamed that everything I had suspected, everything I had quietly documented, was real. The phone buzzed again, louder this time. In the hush of the hall, a few relatives exchanged curious glances. Vanessa looked up at him with a questioning smile, whispering something into his ear. He shook his head quickly, his lips pressed thin. She tilted her head, confused, but still clung to his arm. I took a step closer, the bridesmaid dresses shifting in my grip. His eyes flicked to mine for the first time that evening. For just a second, Iso panic. Not guilt, not sorrow, but fear. His jaw tightened, a bead of sweat tracing along his temple, despite the cool October air conditioning. He swallowed hard, his throat bobbing. That look confirmed what my heart already knew. Whatever secret he had tried to bury in Phoenix, whatever shadow followed him across state lines, was about to surface. The crowd began to stir again, whispers weaving through the room. Some focused on me, some on Vanessa, but more now looked at Mark. Sensing his unease, my mother finally lowered her camera, frowning at him. "Mark, what is going on?" Her tone carried irritation rather than concern, like a hostess annoyed by a guest spoiling her party. He shook his head. "Nothing. Just work." But his voice cracked at the end, betraying him. The phone buzzed a third time. My chest tightened. My hand itched to grab it from his pocket and hold it up for everyone to see. I restrained myself, standing taller instead, my eyes locked on his trembling hands. My suspicion was no longer just a whisper in my mind. It was a roar, indéniable, pounding through my veins. Mark looked down, lips moving without sound. Vanessa tugged at his arm, whispering again, but he kept shaking his head. The crowd leaned in, tension thick as smoke. And then I knew with absolute certainty, that the truth I had stumbled upon weeks earlier in the clerk's office, the document I had tucked away in secret, was not a mistake. It was real. And his unraveling right here in this hall was the proof. I steadied my breath, the bridesmaid dresses heavy against my chest, my father's words still echoing in my ears. This was not only betrayal, It was exposure. And the first cracks had already split wide open. 3 weeks earlier, I had been sitting at my desk at the Franklin County Clerk's office. The fluorescent lights humming overhead as rain tapped against the windows. The pile of delayed filings on my desk was thick. Marriage certificates from other counties that needed to be processed into our system. It was routine work. The kind of detail-oriented task that usually calmed me. I picked up the next document, scanned the names, and nearly dropped my coffee when I saw it. Mark Donovan. My Mark. Listed as groom. The bride's name was Jennifer Lopez Martin. The date was August 14th. 2019. 2 full years before he slipped a ring on my finger by the lake. My hands shook as I held the paper, my eyes running over every line again and again, hoping I was misreading. His birth date matched. His parents listed as witnesses matched. And his signature, the exact swoop of his D and sharp cross of his T, matched perfectly. I stared at it so long, my coffee went cold. For the first 10 minutes I told myself it had to be a clerical mistake. Someone with the same name. But no coincidence stretched that far. With trembling fingers, I slipped the paper onto the copier, made a duplicate, and slid the original back into the stack. My copy went into my tote bag, hidden between folders. My pulse thundered as if I had just committed a crime, though all I had done was protect myself. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the copy spread in front of me, the overhead light flickering like it knew the weight of what I was uncovering. I opened the county database, my login granting me access to records across state lines. I searched Jennifer's name. Within minutes, I found a filing from Maricopa County in Arizona. Petition for dissolution of marriage. Filed in March of 2022. Grounds included abandonment, misrepresentation of assets, and theft totaling $37,000. My throat closed as I scrolled. Jennifer claimed Mark had drained their joint accounts, taken her grandmother's jewelry, even disappeared with cash she had saved for a down payment. The words on the page blurred as I fought tears. I wanted to slam the laptop shut, to pretend I had never seen it. But I kept reading. The petition noted that he could not be located for service, that his whereabouts were unknown. For 3 weeks I carried that knowledge like a stone in my chest. Every morning, I put on my engagement ring and smiled at coworkers when they asked about wedding plans. Every evening, I sat across from Mark at dinner, nodding while he described another business trip, hearing only the echoes of Jennifer's words about fraud and abandonment. I wanted to scream at him, to confront him, but fear stopped me. Fear of what it would mean for my wedding, for the money already spent, for the family who had already chosen sides, fear that if I was wrong, I would be the paranoid daughter my mother always accused me of being. Instead, I watched. I studied his phone calls. The way he silenced numbers, he did not want me to see. I checked our joint account, noticing small withdrawals that never matched receipts. I wrote notes in a plain spiral notebook, logging times, dates, excuses. It became my secret. A private investigation carried out in the quiet of my apartment while the world believed I was a bride to be glowing with happiness. Now, in Murphy's hall, the buzzing phone in his pocket confirmed what my gut had been screaming. My hands trembled as I set the bridesmaid dresses down on a chair. I reached into my own bag and pulled out my phone. My thumb scrolled quickly to the folder of photographs I had taken of those documents. My chest tightened as I looked at the familiar image of the marriage certificate. His name, her name, the date, the signatures, the proof. The crowd was restless, their voices rising in speculation. Vanessa's laugh rang out above them, a brittle sound trying to mask unease. Mark's face was gray, sweat shining at his temples. I took one slow breath, then lifted my phone high enough for the front rows to see. "This is not a rehearsal dinner," I said, my voice louder than I expected. "This is a fraud." My phone screen glowed. The certificate visible. Mark Donovan. Married to Jennifer Lopez Martin. August 14th. 2019. Phoenix, Arizona. The words seemed to hang in the air like smoke. A hush fell over the room. Glasses froze midair. Someone gasped. Sharp and loud. A murmur rippled through the guests as they leaned forward, eyes wide, straining to see the screen. Vanessa's smile faltered. Her grip on Mark's arm tightening, my mother's camera dropped against her chest. Her hand suddenly still. Mark's jaw opened and closed without sound. His lips pale. Around me the whispers grew. Sharp and cutting. Did she just say married? Is that legal? Oh my God! The air filled with disbelief, confusion, and a growing sense of something darker. And I stood there, phone raised, my heart pounding but my voice steady, showing them all the truth I had carried alone for 3 unbearable weeks. The glow of my phone lit up Mark's name for everyone to see. I read slowly, my voice slicing through the thick silence. Mark Donovan. Groom, Jennifer Lopez Martin. Bride. Witnesses, William and Margaret Donovan. Date of marriage, August 14th, 2019. Location, Phoenix, Arizona. His parents' signatures were clear. Their names printed in black ink, right under his. I let the words settle into the air like a verdict. The crowd shifted. A rustle of disbelief moving through the room. Some leaned closer. Others covered their mouths. Vanessa's smile cracked as her eyes darted between me and the glowing screen. I swiped to the next photo. My pulse steady now. My hands firm. A divorce filing from Maricopa County. March of 2022. Jennifer Lopez Martin versus Mark Donovan. Allegations included abandonment, fraudulent concealment of assets, and theft of $37,000. The words glared back at me. I read them aloud. Theft, Fraud, abandonment. Mark stumbled back half a step. His complexion almost gray. A sheen of sweat glistened across his forehead despite the cool air. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. Just a sharp breath that rattled his chest. Vanessa's hand, still looped through his arm, trembled. Her nails dug into his jacket until she pulled back sharply, leaving red marks on his sleeve. Her face flushed, lips parting in shock. My mother broke the tension with her voice, sharp and irritated, as though I had interrupted her evening plans. Emily, stop this right now. Do not ruin the celebration with your dramatics. Put the phone away. I turned on her. The weight of decades of dismissal burning in my words. You want me to hide proof that the man standing here in my dress rehearsal is a criminal. You want me to protect him so you can protect your image. Is that it? Who are you protecting? Mom. Because it is not me. Her mouth snapped shut, the camera strap sliding from her shoulder as she faltered under the stares of relatives who had always believed her version of things. The hall was deathly still. All eyes on Mark. He raised a hand as if to wave the evidence away. His voice finally scraping out. That is not what it looks like. It was a misunderstanding. Jennifer and I. It was complicated. We were separated. The paperwork was delayed. His voice cracked again. Thin and desperate, I shook my head, cutting him off. The paperwork says otherwise. The courts say otherwise. You disappeared. You stole from her. You married her and then left her with nothing. The guests erupted in whispers, shock rippling across their faces. A cousin near the back said loudly, "She's reading court records." That is official. Mark's lips trembled. He reached for Vanessa's hand again, but she jerked away, clutching her champagne glass instead. Her eyes were wide. The earlier triumph gone, replaced with confusion and panic. I held the phone higher, showing the screen to the relatives nearest me. The silence was punctuated only by the faint buzz of Mark's phone vibrating in his pocket again. The same Phoenix number glowed briefly before he silenced it with shaking fingers. "This is who you were ready to celebrate," I said, my voice low but steady. "A man already married, already accused of theft and fraud. A man who let my sister steal my gown and my day, while he hides from the truth, calling him over and over from Arizona." Mark swayed slightly, his knees locking as though to keep from collapsing. The mask of charm and composure he had worn since the day I met him was gone. What remained was a man stripped bare in front of every witness, his lies crumbling faster than he could catch them. Vanessa set her glass down with trembling hands. The sound of crystal against wood sharp in the quiet. She stared at him, then at me, her lips moving without words. For once in her life, my sister had no clever line to save her. My father's voice came again. Stronger this time. Emily has given us facts, documents, not feelings, not suspicions. Facts. He turned toward Mark, his expression dark. Do you deny signing that certificate? Do you deny those charges? Mark's head dropped, his hands tightening into fists. I cannot explain it here, he muttered, his voice almost gone. The room buzzed with outrage and disbelief. My mother tried again, her voice higher now, more desperate. Stop this. Emily, we can talk about it later. Do not embarrass your sister like this. I stared at her, fury tightening my throat. Embarrass her? He is already married, accused of stealing. And you want me to be quiet to spare her feelings? What about mine? What about the truth? The tension snapped like a string pulled too tight. My mother's cheeks flushed, her lips pressed thin. But she had no answer. Mark took another stumbling step backward. His hand reached for Vanessa again. But she recoiled, her arm folding tightly across her chest. Her face showed what I had waited all night to see. Doubt. Fear. The realization that the man she had tried to parade as hers might destroy her too. The hall filled with the sound of whispers swelling louder. Like a tide turning, my phone still glowed in my hand, the damning words frozen on the screen. And Mark, once so confident, stood trembling in the center of it all, his mask finally torn away. I steadied my breath and swiped to the next set of photos. The glow of my phone cut across the dim light, illuminating not just one mistake, but a pattern. A timeline I had built piece by piece when I realized Mark's lies stretched further than me or Jennifer. Maria Alvarez. I spoke her name aloud, my voice clear and deliberate. 31 years old, from Denver, Colorado. She inherited $30,000 after her grandfather passed away. Money she planned to use for a down payment on a house. Instead, she lost it all to you. The room hushed again. Eyes darted from me to Mark. He shook his head frantically, his lips forming protests, but no sound strong enough to rise above the silence. I read from the statement I had printed weeks earlier. He convinced her to put him on her account. Within months, the money was gone. Maria had to sell her car to cover basic expenses. She filed a police report, but Mark vanished before they could serve him. Gasps rippled through the hall. A cousin whispered that she remembered hearing about a young woman in Denver, a cautionary tale that now had a face standing before them. I swiped again. Rebecca Wien. I said, the words like steel leaving my mouth. Portland, Oregon. Age 29, a physical therapist who worked 2 jobs to save $17,000. She and Mark signed a lease together. Or so she believed. He convinced her to pay the deposit for their future home. Then he disappeared, leaving her without money, without an apartment, and drowning in debt. She had no choice but to move back in with her parents. Rebecca's story was one that had broken me most when I found it. A woman who thought she had built her independence only to watch it crumble overnight. I let the silence stretch, so everyone could feel the weight of it. Mark's face had drained of every bit of color. His hands shook as he tried to gesture toward me. Those are lies, he croaked. But his voice lacked conviction. I looked directly at Vanessa now. Do you know how he paid for the dinners he took you to? Do you know how he covered that hotel weekend in Cincinnati? Her eyes flickered nervously. I held up another image. Bank statements from our joint account, charges for restaurants I never attended, hotels I never stayed in, jewelry stores where I never received gifts. I stepped forward, the pages shaking only from the adrenaline surging through me. This was our card. Vanessa. The one we opened together for wedding expenses. The same account I used to pay deposits to vendors. Every extravagant date you enjoyed. Every gift he handed you with a smile came from money with my name on it. The air grew heavier. Vanessa lifted her hand to her ear, fingers brushing the sparkling diamond studs she wore proudly. I saw her face change as realization dawned. Slowly, almost painfully, she unhooked one earring, then the other. Her fingers trembling. She looked at them in her palm, her lips parting in horror. The room had gone still. Everyone watched her. The golden daughter, stripped of her illusion. Her voice was barely a whisper. These came from you, not from me. I corrected, my voice sharp. From the life I was building, from the savings I worked for, from the future you both tried to destroy. Vanessa's shoulders slumped, her champagne glass abandoned on the table beside her. She looked at Mark, her face pale, her lips pressed tight. He reached toward her, but she jerked it back, clutching the earrings like they burned her skin. The whispers started again, louder this time, sharper, like a storm breaking. Some faces showed pity for me. Others, outrage at the man who had deceived us all. But most turned their eyes on Vanessa, who now stood exposed, not as a triumphant bride but as another victim, complicit in her own downfall. Mark's breathing grew ragged. He ran a hand through his hair, the sweat dampening his temples. He muttered something about explanations, about misunderstandings. But his words drowned under the murmurs of the crowd. I raised the phone one last time, my hand steady, my voice firm. These are not misunderstandings. They are lives you shattered. Maria, selling her car. Rebecca forced back into her parents' house. Jennifer fighting to recover from theft. And me, standing here in front of family who watched you smile while you stole from me. The silence that followed was suffocating. Mark stared at me with eyes wide and frantic, as though searching for a crack to crawl through. But the walls of Murphy's Hall held him in. Vanessa still clutched the earrings in her fist, her knuckles white, and for the first time that night, she looked less like the sister who had stolen my dress and more like someone realizing too late that she had been nothing more than another name in his trail of ruin. The murmurs in the hall grew restless, but I kept my eyes fixed on my mother. Mark had already begun to crumble. Vanessa's face had lost its shine. Yet Patricia stood stiff and unyielding, as if her approval alone could stitch the evening back together. I knew then it was time to strip away her mask too. I drew in a breath that shook but came out steady. 3 weeks ago I called you. My voice carried further than I expected, pulling everyone's attention. I told you I had found something about Mark. That something was wrong. I was terrified. And I begged you to listen. Do you remember what you told me? Patricia's chin lifted slightly, her eyes darting around as if searching for an ally among the guests. Her lips parted, already forming the familiar line. You misunderstood. Emily. You always think too much. Not this time. My thumb tapped my phone and a recording spilled into the room. Clear and undeniable. Her voice, casual but sharp, filled the silence. Emily. Honey. You should be grateful a man like that chose you. Instead of looking for problems, learn how to keep him. The words reverberated like a hammer striking glass. A collective gasp swept across the hall. Aunt Linda shook her head slowly, her lips pursed tight. Uncle Frank shifted forward in his seat, his eyes narrowing at Patricia with something like disbelief. I let the recording play twice before silencing it. My hand trembled slightly, but I stood tall, the phone still glowing. You told me to be thankful he picked me, even when I was staring at proof that he was already married. You told me to stop searching for answers when I held evidence of theft and fraud in my hands. That was your advice to your daughter. Patricia's face turned blotchy, red creeping up her neck. She waved a hand as if to brush the words away. That was taken out of context, she said quickly. I was only telling you not to sabotage yourself. I wanted you to be happy, happy. I repeated, my voice sharp enough to slice the air. You wanted me quiet? You wanted me blind? The crowd murmured again, louder this time. voices weaving through the hall like wind through broken glass. Aunt Linda spoke, her voice trembling with anger. That is not guidance. Patricia, that is cruelty. Uncle Frank's voice followed, steady and clear. What have you done to your daughter? How many years have you spoken to her this way? Patricia's chest rose and fell, her eyes darting to Vanessa, to Mark, then back to me. Her lips quivered, and then her voice snapped out louder, roar than I had ever heard. Vanessa was always the natural choice. Men will always lean toward her. Better to keep it in the family than lose it outside. The hall froze. The clink of a glass being set down echoed like thunder in the silence. Someone gasped. Someone else muttered, "Oh my God," under their breath. Vanessa's face flamed red, her eyes dropping to the floor as though it might swallow her whole. She clutched the earrings I had exposed earlier, so tightly that her knuckles whitened. For once, her posture sagged, her shoulders no longer squared with confidence. My father, who had stayed quiet after his first defense of me, stepped forward again. His voice was low but firm, and the tremor in it came from anger, not weakness. "Pat, do you hear yourself? You are saying this in front of everyone." She turned toward him, her mouth opening, as though to explain. But no words came out. The whispers around us grew, sharper and louder. Aunt Linda's voice cut through them again. "Patricia, you just admitted you encouraged one daughter to take the other's fiancé. You told us it was better if he stayed in the family. How could you say that?" My mother's eyes darted wildly, her face pale now, her hands trembling as she grasped her purse strap. She stammered, "You don't understand. I was trying to protect Emily." "Protect me," I said, my throat tight but my words fierce. "You told me to be grateful he chose me. You told me to shrink myself so he would not leave. You let Vanessa cozy up to him while I was planning a wedding. Protect me. No. You betrayed me." The weight of those words pressed into the hall until it seemed even the chandeliers trembled. For years I had carried the suspicion that my mother valued Vanessa's shine over my steadiness, her beauty over my effort. Tonight, the truth spilled from her own lips, and there was no taking it back. Vanessa finally looked up, her face streaked with blotchy color. Her eyes flicked between Patricia and Mark, then landed on me. For the first time in my life, she had nothing clever to say. No sparkle left to wield. I swallowed the lump in my throat, forcing myself to stand straighter. The sting of humiliation burned hot in my chest, but I would not let it bend me. I let my eyes sweep across the faces in the room. Relatives who had watched this imbalance play out quietly for years. I saw recognition in their expressions now, the dawning awareness that this had not begun tonight, but had been built brick by brick over decades. The silence thickened again, a silence heavy with judgment, pity, and shame that no one could disguise. I had spent my life being told to accept less, to be practical, to lower my expectations, but tonight the truth was out in the open, spoken so loudly it echoed through Murphy's Hall. Impossible to ignore, impossible to silence, and though my throat ached and my eyes burned, I did not lower my head. I stood tall, rooted in the weight of the truth, knowing it no longer belonged to me alone. The heavy doors at the back of the hall swung open, the sound cutting clean through the thick silence. Every head turned. A woman stood in the doorway, framed by the light from the corridor. She was petite, with dark hair pulled into a low ponytail, wearing a simple blue blouse and jeans. No makeup, no jewelry, nothing like the glittering scene she had just walked into. In her arms was a thick manila folder, held to her chest like a shield. Her eyes scanned the room once before landing squarely on Mark. There was no hesitation, no flicker of doubt. She stepped forward, her voice carrying clear and steady. "My name is Jennifer Lopez Martin." The ripple of recognition moved through me first. Jennifer, the name from the certificate, the woman from the divorce filings, the person whose story had haunted me for weeks. Now she was here, flesh and blood, walking straight into the storm. Mark staggered backward, his hand clutching the back of a chair as though it might hold him upright. His voice cracked, barely a whisper. "Jennifer." She stopped just a few feet from him, her face calm, but her jaw tight. "You owe my daughter 36 months of child support. $65,000. And I am not leaving until everyone here knows who you really are." The hall erupted with murmurs again, louder than before. People craned their necks, leaning toward one another in disbelief. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. Vanessa's eyes darted wildly from Jennifer to Mark, her face draining of color. Jennifer opened the folder with steady hands and pulled out a photograph. She held it high enough for the front rows to see. A little girl stared back at us, no more than 5 years old, her dark curls framing a face both soft and familiar. But it was her eyes that froze the room. Bright green, the exact shade of Mark's. Gasps filled the air, sharp and unrestrained. Vanessa let out a choking sound, covering her mouth as tears spilled over. Someone behind me whispered, "Oh Lord," and another muttered, "It is his child." There is no denying it. Jennifer's voice trembled only slightly as she spoke again. "Her name is Sophia. She is 5. She has severe asthma. I have been raising her alone while this man pretended to start fresh with every new woman he found. He left us when she was 6 months old. He emptied our accounts, took my grandmother's jewelry, and never came back." The photo in her hand shook just slightly, but her gaze stayed locked on Mark. "Do you know what it is like to watch your child struggle to breathe while her father hides from the law? Do you know what it is like to work 2 jobs just to pay for her medication while he wines and dines other women with stolen money?" Mark pressed a hand to his forehead, shaking his head. "Jennifer, please. Not here. We can talk privately." Her voice cut him off, firm and sharp. "Privately is how you escaped accountability for 3 years. Tonight you do not get to hide." I felt the blood rush to my ears, the heat in my chest, almost unbearable. My phone still in my hand. I snapped a photo of the scene instinctively, Jennifer holding up the picture, Mark pale and trembling, Vanessa sobbing quietly beside him. Proof layered on proof until denial had no ground left. Uncle Frank stood, his face hard. "Is this true?" He looked directly at Mark. "Do you deny you have a daughter?" Mark's lips parted, but nothing came. His eyes flickered to the floor, then to Jennifer, then to the crowd that would no longer protect him. His silence screamed louder than words ever could. Jennifer lowered the photo but pulled out another sheet from the folder. "This is the child support order filed in Arizona. 36 months unpaid." She held it out, and one of my cousins near the front stepped forward to take it, scanning the bold numbers before passing it along. Each set of eyes that read it widened further. Vanessa's tears fell freely now, streaking her carefully powdered cheeks. She looked at the photo of Sophia again, her breath hitching. "She looks just like him," she whispered hoarsely. Jennifer turned toward her, her expression softening just slightly. "Yes, she looks like him. But she deserves better than to be abandoned because he cannot stop lying." The weight of her words pressed into every corner of the hall. People who had once clapped for Vanessa and Mark now stared at them as though they were strangers. Even my mother's shoulders slumped, her lips trembling, her eyes avoiding the accusing stares of her own family. Jennifer placed the photograph back into the folder with care, as if she were tucking her daughter back into safety. She looked at me then, her eyes tired but resolute. "Thank you for not letting him escape again." I could not speak, I only nodded, the burn in my throat too sharp for words. The silence stretched, heavy and suffocating. Mark's hands shook violently now, his phone buzzing again with the same Phoenix number he refused to answer. Vanessa turned away from him, covering her face as if hiding from the entire town. And in the center of Murphy's Hall, the image of a 5-year-old girl with her father's green eyes lingered in every mind. A truth no one could ever unsee. The double doors opened again, this time with purpose. 2 uniformed officers stepped inside, their badges gleaming under the chandeliers. One of them, tall with a steady voice, announced himself clearly. Officer Miguel Ramirez. Franklin Police Department. We are here on a warrant issued by Maricopa County, Arizona. Gasps rippled across the hall. The crowd that had been frozen in silence now leaned forward, as if the entire town had been waiting for this moment. Officer Ramirez held a folded packet of papers high, then opened it. Mark Donovan. You are under arrest for failure to pay court, ordered child support, financial fraud, and interstate evasion of civil process. The words fell like stones, one by one, until Mark stumbled backward into a chair. He clutched the backrest like it might hold him up, his face pale and slick with sweat. No, this is a mistake, he stammered, his voice cracking. Jennifer, please, tell them. Jennifer stood tall near the front, her folder still in her arms. She did not move toward him, did not speak. Her silence was louder than any condemnation. Officer Ramirez continued, reading directly from the papers. 36 months of unpaid support for your minor child, Sofia Lopez Martin. Outstanding balance of $65,000. Allegations of theft and fraudulent concealment of assets, totaling more than $100,000 across multiple states, crossing state lines to evade service of process. Every charge struck like thunder. People whispered in shock, some pulling out their phones. I heard the faint ping of notifications already being sent into the small community beyond Murphy's Hall. Mark's phone buzzed violently on the table where he had set it down, and this time the vibration rattled against the wood. He grabbed it with shaking hands. But the officers were already moving toward him. The name flashing on the screen caught my eye. Bradley Construction. The ring cut through the air, harsh and insistent. One of the officers held out his hand. Mr. Donovan. Place the phone on the table. Mark resisted for a second, but the officer's gaze was unyielding. Slowly, Mark set it down. Officer Ramirez pressed the speaker button, and a man's angry voice filled the hall. This is Tom Bradley. Bradley Construction. Where is our $47,000? Donovan, you cashed our deposit and your check bounced. If you do not call me back, we will press charges. The room exploded in murmurs again. Mark's head dropped into his hands, his shoulders shaking. Officer Ramirez ended the call and looked directly at him. Seems the list keeps growing. The second officer, a woman with sharp eyes, stepped forward. Sir, stand up and place your hands behind your back. Mark pushed himself to his feet, swaying, his mouth opened in protest, words tumbling out in broken fragments. This is a misunderstanding. I was going to pay it back. I just needed more time. The cuffs clicked around his wrists, cold and final. Gasps echoed again as cameras flashed. Cousins, uncles, even old neighbors lifted their phones, recording every second. My mother cried out weakly, her voice cracking. Stop this. Please. Not in front of everyone. But no one moved to shield him. No one looked away. For years he had stolen quietly, lying smoothly, living off the silence of others. Now every pair of eyes in town watched him being led away. His lies no longer safe. The officers guided him toward the exit, his head hanging low, his suit wrinkled and damp with sweat. The sound of the cuffs clinking with each step was deafening. Behind me, relatives whispered fiercely. He conned Maria in Denver. He drained Rebecca in Portland. Now even local businesses. I cannot believe Patricia defended this. As Mark shuffled forward, I locked eyes with Vanessa. Her face was pale, streaked with tears. Her hands still curled around the earrings she had torn from her ears. She looked at me not with triumph, not with malice, but with something that finally resembled shame. The doors opened wide, the night air rushing in. Mark was led out into the flashing blue and red lights, waiting in the parking lot. The entire town would see. Even those who had not been in the hall. Neighbors already gathered outside, their phones raised, capturing every step. The whispers did not stop when the doors closed again. They grew louder, spreading from table to table, cousin to cousin, neighbor to neighbor. Mark Donovan had been arrested at his own stolen rehearsal. And by morning, every corner of our small Ohio town would know the truth. I sank into a chair, my chest heavy but unbowed, the image of Mark in cuffs seared into my mind. Not as a victory, but as proof. Proof that I had not been paranoid. Proof that the man my family lifted above me was nothing more than a con dragged finally into the light. The hall had not yet settled when the door opened once more, and a familiar figure entered. Mrs. Patterson, manager of the local bank branch, strode in with her usual air of authority. Though her face carried the weight of bad news, she clutched a folder close to her chest and walked straight toward me. "Emily, I am sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice low but clear enough to carry. "But this cannot wait." She laid the folder on the table. 7 business accounts connected to Mark Donovan have been frozen as of this evening. Altogether, nearly $90,000 in deposits, and contracts are locked pending investigation. Her words rippled through the room like fresh thunder. My cousins leaned in, murmuring. My uncles exchanged looks of disbelief. Even Patricia sat down heavily, her mouth opening and closing without sound. Vanessa covered her face with both hands, as if shielding herself from the impact of each revelation. "Mrs. Patterson's voice softened as she looked at me. "I wanted you to hear it from me directly before it spreads. The board will meet tomorrow to discuss liability. But I want you to know the bank recognizes you had no role in this." I nodded, my throat thick with gratitude. Though words refused to come, my phone buzzed on the table. A text from my supervisor at the county clerk's office appeared, the glow illuminating my shaking hands. "We know you are not at fault. Emily, do not worry about your position. Your integrity has never been in question." Relief loosened the tightness in my chest, though exhaustion weighed heavier than ever. Around me, the hum of voices grew. Guests whispered about the scandal, about the fraud, about the handcuffs glinting under the blue lights outside. Already I could imagine it spreading down Main Street, into the grocery aisles, across church pews. By morning, every household would know. And then attention shifted. Eyes turned. Not to me this time, but to the woman still standing in the center of the room, in ivory silk. Vanessa had remained frozen in the gown she stole from my closet, her face streaked with mascara, her lips trembling. For hours she had stood proudly, pretending to be a bride. But now every detail of that dress screamed insult. It was Aunt Linda who said what the rest were thinking. "Take it off." Her voice carried sharp and unflinching. "That dress belongs to Emily. Wearing it here is a disgrace." The words struck like a stone hurled into still water. More voices followed, rising from every side. "You cannot stand in her gown. Take it off. Vanessa, you brought shame into this hall." Vanessa shook her head violently, her tears smearing darker. "Please. Not here." She wrapped her arms across her chest, as if the fabric could protect her. But Uncle Frank's voice cut through, heavy and final. "You paraded yourself in that gown while our family applauded a thief. That insult ends tonight. Take it off." The demand swelled until the hall echoed with it, the air so thick with judgment it was impossible to breathe. Vanessa's legs buckled, and she dropped to her knees, sobbing. Mascara bled down her cheeks in black rivers, her hair falling loose from its pins. Her hands trembled as she reached for the buttons down her back. Patricia rose halfway, her mouth forming protests. But even she faltered, under the storm of eyes that turned against her. For once she did not have the power to shield her favorite child. The gown slipped from Vanessa's shoulders, the ivory silk crumpling around her like the ashes of pride. Gasps filled the hall. Not from scandal anymore, but from the raw sight of humiliation made tangible. The dress, once the symbol of my hope, now lay puddled on the polished floor, its lace and pearls dull in the unforgiving light. Vanessa knelt there in her slip, her face buried in her hands, her sobs echoing through the silent room. All the attention, all the applause, all the adoration she had fed on her whole life had turned into a mirror she could not bear to face. I stood a few feet away, watching. My heart did not leap in triumph. There was no thrill in her downfall. What I felt was quieter, steadier, something I had waited for my whole life. Balance. The sight of her undone was not revenge. Not really. It was justice. For every summer camp she was sent to while I scrubbed the kitchen. For every college fund denied to me while she was handed tuition checks. For every time my mother told me to be grateful, someone like Mark chose me. In that moment I felt the scale tip, not in cruelty, but in clarity. At last. The truth had weight. The hall remained silent, except for Vanessa's muffled sobs. The ivory dress lay crumpled. No longer radiant, no longer desired. Only a relic of a lie that had been stripped away. And I stood there, not hating her, not celebrating her shame, only knowing deep in my bones that for the first time, the air felt honest. Pastor Williams moved quietly to the center of the hall, his familiar presence cutting through the weight of the silence. His white hair glowed faintly under the chandelier, his hand resting on the back of a chair as if to steady everyone's nerves at once. He had married couples in this town for 40 years, buried our grandparents, and baptized our children. Now his voice carried the calm strength of someone who had seen families torn apart and stitched together again. Families cannot heal if they cling to lies. Tonight, the truth has been spoken. You can keep pretending, or you can face it. No one answered him at first. The hum of the air conditioning was the only sound, and the lace train of my gown still lay crumpled around Vanessa, like a discarded stage prop. She knelt in silence, her shoulders trembling, while my mother pressed both hands to her face. I waited, my breath shallow, my chest aching, not knowing what could possibly come next. Then my father stood. Robert Carter had never been the kind of man to raise his voice, never the one to stop Patricia when her words cut me sharp. But now his voice broke through the stillness, rough and unsteady. "Emily, I should have defended you years ago." His eyes met mine for the first time in what felt like forever. I saw the favoritism, the way your mother praised Vanessa and dismissed you. I thought keeping the peace was the right thing. But peace, without fairness, is not peace at all. I am sorry. And I will not stay silent anymore. The words hit me harder than I expected. Munesh felt weak. My throat burned. But I forced myself to hold his gaze. It was not absolution. Not yet. But it was something I had needed to hear for 30 years. Around the room, other voices followed. Aunt Linda's hands shook as she wrung them together. I should have said something too. "Patricia, I watched you belittle Emily for years, and I said nothing because it wasn't my place. But it was cruel. And we all let it happen." Uncle Frank, always the quiet mediator, spoke louder than I had ever heard him. "I enabled it too. I called it family business and stayed out of it. But I saw the way Emily was treated. And tonight I see how that silence broke her piece by piece." Even Cousin Janet, usually glued to her phone, lowered it at last and muttered, "Aunt Patricia, you always made it clear who the golden child was." We all saw it. The web of silence collapsed, thread by thread, until my mother's head hung heavy. Her lips parted. But for once, no excuses came. Only a faint whisper. I thought I was protecting the family. Vanessa's sobs cut through, jagged and raw. She lifted her phone from the heap of fabric at her knees, her fingers trembling as she typed, "Jennifer." Her voice cracked. "I know I cannot undo what he did to you. But I can do something for Sophia. I just transferred $4,000. It is all I have saved. Please use it for her treatments." Jennifer froze, her eyes softening. She stepped forward. Glancing at the confirmation screen, Vanessa held out. "Thank you," she said, her tone heavy with both exhaustion and sincerity. "That will help more than you know." Vanessa's sobs deepened as she pressed her face into her hands. For once, her tears were not born of vanity or loss of spotlight. They were the tears of someone stripped bare, forced to confront the wreckage of her choices. I stood watching, my heart strangely steady. For so long I had craved revenge, dreamt of vindication. Imagined the moment they would all see me clearly. And yet standing there, I felt none of the glee I once thought would come, only relief. I was not the shadow anymore. I was not the afterthought. I was not the backup daughter. Pastor Williams spoke again. Softer this time, healing will not happen overnight. But you have been given a chance tonight that many families never get. Do not waste it. My father turned to me once more. His shoulders squared. We will change. Emily, I promise you that. His voice cracked but did not break. I will not let silence be my legacy anymore. Relatives murmured agreement. Some nodding. Some pressing tissues to their eyes. For the first time in my life, I felt their gaze not as pity or dismissal, but as acknowledgement. They finally saw me. Slowly the hall emptied. People left in small groups, their voices hushed, their phones buzzing with messages already spreading the news. By dawn, Franklin would know every detail. Mark Donovan's fraud, Patricia's favoritism, Vanessa's humiliation. But for me, the noise outside no longer mattered. When the last chair scraped against the floor and the chandeliers dimmed, I stepped out into the cool Ohio night, the October air bit at my skin. Crisp and sharp, with it felt like freedom. The sky stretched wide above me. Stars scattered like a promise of something beyond this night. They had come to steal my wedding. Instead, they lost everything. I drew a deep breath, filling my lungs with air that felt honest at last. My life was no longer defined by shadows, lies, or silence. For the first time, I was free to begin again. If this story of truth and justice moved you, I would love to hear your thoughts. Share in the comments what moment struck you most. Do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you can join me for more stories of family, betrayal, and the power of standing tall when everything tries to pull you down.